11 a.m. and we now make way for the Morning Watch with the Reverend Dr. Dylan Toussaint. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, so you definitely want to go join over there. It's time for the Morning Watch.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch, how serious is e-banking fraud in Jamaica? A new study. And in the second watch, estate law changes, a win-win for all? For our social media question, we ask, what's your personal e-banking fraud story in a nutshell? We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's our quote.
All right, today's I quote says, "Don't let making a living prevent you from making a life." This one is from John Wooden.
Okay, good morning, Joka.
Good morning.
Yes, very interesting quote there.
Agreed.
Yeah, how you interpret it?
Just live your life to the fullest. At this rate, live your life. I mean, don't stress over a job, because they will get rid of you and they'll find somebody else. Yeah. So one thing I'm not gonna do is keep up myself.
Yes,
over a job. That's right. So live your life.
Yes, well said. And I look forward to a quotation from you.
One day. Well, that's for now. It's time for a break.
The first touch will be back after this.
For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, both say, raise my feel the winner. For the richest sauce, always the saucy. Raise my feel the winner. And if you talk about things, don't know say we win the race. The King's Cup, them a kind of food we love. I won't say, raise my feel the winner. Real fire for sure. The one and only. Raise my feel, always give me more. Good taste and movie. Praise bring you the food.
I am just a little girl, but I have big dreams. And one day, all my dreams are going to come true. That's why I'm glad Mommy opened a Sajikwa Bank Star Savers account for me. It's the best gift she could ever give me. Because one day, I won't be little anymore. And my small savings are going to grow big. I even got my own debit card. Give your child a gift that will grow. Open a Sajikwa Bank Star Savers account today.
When teeth diapers are difficult to change, it's time for Pampers Easy Ups with 360 stretchy waistband. They're easy to put on and take off, keeping their skin dry and protected. Changes are easy with Easy Ups.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, sometimes it takes a personal experience for us to understand the impact something can have on us. And in this case, it has to do with electronic banking fraud. Such a fraudulent activity has emerged as a global epidemic, raising serious concerns among individuals and institutions. Now, the sad fact is that e-banking fraud is no respecter of persons, as our guests will confirm and affirm in a short while. And speaking about our guests, they are Dr. Paul Bourne, lecturer and research consultant, co-researcher of electronic banking fraud in Jamaica, and also Ms. Ruth Howard, e-banking fraud victim. think we're expecting to have one more person on who's not on as yet. But good morning to you both.
Good morning to your listeners.
Good morning. Good morning.
Great. Good to have you both with us. That's Dr. Bourne and Miss Howard. Let me begin with you, Dr. Bourne. What prompted the research on electronic banking fraud in Jamaica, and how was it conducted?
All right, an extremely good question that we need to sort of lay some premise to. I am a supervisor for a group of students at Northern Caribbean University who are doing their masters in business. So they came up with the idea of I've always asked my students to do issues that are relevant to society that can make a contribution to people's lives and well-being. So when they actually did this one, I said, yes, love the idea. So we did all the preliminary preambles and then start collecting data. And I wanted to collect data from a quantitative perspective to ensure that we are understanding the matter from an extensive perspective as against a single phenomenon. So currently, I'm doing the research. We want to get 1,300 Jamaicans. Currently, we have about 500. So we are still getting into the things. But based on what the findings preliminary are saying, I believe we should actually share with our viewers.
And you're saying you have 500 so far?
So far.
Right. So in light of that sample size, what's the margin of error?
We're talking about a margin of error for a sample size of 1,300 is 3%. So a margin of error for a sample size of 500 is about 5%. So the value, I could automatically stop the research where I'm at the moment. But I don't like that. I like purity, and so therefore I'm going for the 1,300.
Right. So how preliminary studies when the sample size is so small?
No, it's not small, all right? Because statistically, a sample size of over 30 is said to be large. A sample size of 500 is actually extremely large. But what I really want to do is to ensure that my findings are robust. And that is a reason for actually trying to go to a sample size of 1,000 or 1,300.
And you chose not to wait until that time?
We have been tracking the numbers because as a researcher, you are trying to track numbers. We're tracking the numbers through the normal statistical platform that is SurveyMonkey. So we have been tracking the numbers, and the numbers have been consistently at these values from the numbers were say about 100 to where they are now today.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about e-banking fraud, and we also have Miss Howard on. Miss Howard, would you briefly tell us about your personal experiences in regards to electronic banking fraud?
Sure, no problem. So what happened to me was that my Visa debit card was cloned and then used to make purchases at a retail outlet abroad. So I didn't realize it until, of course, it's always something like this. I was trying to make a purchase that was over a certain amount, and my card kept getting declined. And I was like, no, and I'm sure I have money. I don't have money on my card. So when it kept getting declined, and even when I went to the ATM, I was not getting to withdraw the money. I checked my bank, you check your balance, and I realized that something was off. I was missing something like $60,000. So I went into my bank statement to check it, and I realized that my card had been traveling and making purchases at Target and JCPenney and some other stores in San Antonio, Texas. I've never been to San Antonio, Texas, but apparently my card had, gotten a visa and traveled.
Wow.
So that I had to make a report to the bank, and then after making a report to them, they did their investigation. It took them about 2 months, but eventually they reimbursed me the funds when they realized what had taken place.
Yeah. So, what was the process like in terms of reimbursement? How long you had to wait and all of that?
About 2 months. So I made the report, and then they acknowledged receipt of it and said that they would have to do their own checks to ensure that it was a valid report that was being made. And after they did their checks, they came back to me to say that they were seeing where the money was indeed used from my account, and that it must have been a situation where the card was cloned. They don't know where it took place. That's the kind of thing. They said that this kind of thing happens. They report it to the whichever unit of the police, but they don't know. The rep told me that it was highly unlikely that they would be able to, for example, track exactly where the cloning took place or be able to like convict a person. So the bank in that situation would be reimbursing me the funds. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you reflect on it, you believe that you actually expose yourself in any way. When I say yourself, I mean your banking
Yeah.
in any
Yeah,
mistakes you
man.
made.
I understand the question. No, I don't. I mean, it was the same outlets that I would normally use, the same ATM machines. I just have no idea at all where the card was cloned or when or by whom. Just because it was just supermarkets and clothing stores, it was regular outlets, and none of them seemed shady or off in any way.
Dr. Bourne, back to your research.
So there are some interesting findings. We want
Yes. Please go ahead and tell us how, if any way, how does it line up with what we just heard?
Miss Howard's story is a good one. But what we found out is that 36% of Jamaicans, from the sample that we have actually selected so far, indicated that they have actually been fleeced of funds through the banking system. What really happens?
How much percentage?
Go ahead.
What percentage you said again?
36%.
Okay. Go ahead,
so
sir.
36 out of every 100 Jamaican, or 18 out of every 50. What were some of the issues? Identity theft, 2.5%. I mean, cloning the cards, 2.9%. Malware, 2.9%. And attempting to use the thing to trick persons, 4.1%. So that is how they have been doing to try to understand what is really going on. But there's an interesting question here that we want a person to hear and understand what the findings are saying.
I'm sorry. Before you go to the interesting question, malware, what is that for those who perhaps do not know?
Malware is 2.9%.
Yeah, what is that? What is that? What's that about? What is
malware? The system to get into your account and make it seem as though you have some transaction there, and you'll actually click on whatever is happening, go through the process, and they actually will get your information through that approach.
Okay, continue.
So here's an interesting find that we want person to, and the question was, do you have any family member or friend that has been fleeced of money through the banking system? And that part is staggering. It's 63.5% of Jamaicans that we have interviewed so far indicate that a friend or a family member they know of that has been fleeced of funds. Now, how much of the funds we are seeing based on the numbers that we have so far? Where are most of these transactions or these issues occurring? NCB, 18.3%, DNS, 14.2%, JN, 3.8%, Sagicor, 2.1%, JMMB, 1.9%, and the credit unions, less than 1%. Now, there are some other things that should be of interest to the persons. Well, we ask the persons as well, have you been reimbursed of your funds? 23.5% of people indicate that they have been reimbursed. 23.5%. So Ms. Howard's case is a very good one, but most Jamaicans so far have not been reimbursed of their funds.
And is there a time frame that's expected to be reimbursed? I've heard person mention about 3 months and all of that.
3 months, 2 months. All right. No, that part we have not actually gotten in, and I think what we want to do for that one, we want to actually do a qualitative study, so as to talk to persons and for persons to give us an assessment of what is happening, so we can sort of gauge what were some of the things that transpire between the individuals and the banks, how they actually got these cards to be cloned, etc.
Okay. Hold that thought, Dr. Bourne and Ms. Howard. We're up on a break. We'll be right back.
Aculab Diagnostics Limited, located at ATM.
Is 7:15 a.m.
As a man living with HIV, a regular day from me, they're much different from yours. I have to wake up and go to people and work in the traffic, but Then when we reach, we can run some joke in the court of them. Sometimes we link up after work and play ball. Or just dip on my ends and kick back before we go home. You see how much we have in common? People living with HIV are a part of our community. Make a part. Protect, accept, and respect. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Wine at your tongue, you know wine at your tongue. Drive smart, don't ramp. Wine at your tongue. If a 87 you feel use, put 87 in your tongue. If you know which fuel you use, vehicle manual find it. No car in a Jamaica, they feel use 87. And a petrol can refine so use the octane for the car where you're driving. And let me tell you some more, if a 87 your vehicle use, you are rev up the savings for sure. Know your tank fuel right, you pocket have a smile. Rev up the savings on every mile. Brought to you by Petrojam, serving Jamaica's energy needs. Burger King with the best tasting burger under the sun. You deserve the best, you are number one. Best to see what cause you deserve it. Yeah, next level, awesome, that's how we serve. Mama, you done your way to taste rose every day. Straight grilled goodness, you deserve it. Great taste, burger, good flavor, fresh Burger King, best tasting burger under the sun.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and in this the first watch, we're asking how serious is e-banking fraud in Jamaica today. And in so doing, we have online Ms. Ruth Howard, who is a victim of e-banking fraud, and Dr. Paul Bourne, lecturer and research consultant, and a co-researcher of electronic banking fraud in Jamaica. Welcome back, both of you. All right, Dr. Bourne, still there?
Right here. Here. I'm eager.
Yeah, continue with your findings. 63% know of a friend or family who has been fleeced, reimbursed 23.5% of persons. Yeah, continue.
Another interesting finding that we have, we asked person, would you continue with e-banking? And 79% of persons said, yes, we'll continue with e-banking. So that indicates to you that although people recognize that there are challenges with the e-banking system in terms of the likeliness of being fleeced, their resources, hard-earned resources, particularly cash, people are still willing to participate in the system. And that says that the bank need to do a robust approach to trying to understand what is really going on and institute measures to protect the confidence of person. Because when we ask person, does what is happening to you affect your confidence in the market system? And 86% of persons said yes, it does. So the bank need to understand the relationship between being fleeced your resources and what is likely to occur in terms of persons actually doing or having transaction on this approach or using the system.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. Miss Howard, you have heard the findings so far from Dr. Bourne. What are your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to comment on that last interpretation, where persons are still willing to use e-banking, and because I'd want to look beyond the willingness to use e-banking to choice. What is the alternative? It's not like we have a choice. We have to use e-banking. That's the world we live in. That's how business is conducted. That's how you get a salary. That's just what it is. There is nothing else for us to use. We can't go back to the days of just walking around with large sums of cash. So we don't really have a choice. It does not at all indicate confidence. It's just we don't have a choice, sir.
Yeah, right. Okay. And any lessons you have learned from your experience, Miss Howard?
Oh, absolutely. Because after that, I did my own little bit of looking into how I can ensure that I protect myself from e-fraud, and I'm also just a lot more vigilant now in where I go to and how I use my card, and I'm watching the cashiers and everybody else.
Yeah.
Just kind of being super alert.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that is an effective deterrent, but you do what you can. You do what you can.
The whole matter of family, what was it 63%, Miss Dr. Bourne?
63% of
Yeah,
friends
right.
and their families have been
Friend
fleeced.
or family.
Yeah.
Miss Howard, what's your experience in terms of others that you may know who have been fleeced?
So that's an interesting point because after sharing my experience, I mean I won't say I've met like lots of other people who've had the same experience, but enough persons who've had the same experience for me to say, but no man, we need some kind of overhaul in the system to ensure that this doesn't continue to take place. And one of the concerns for me is that the rep she told me that this is something that is very hard to track. It's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to pinpoint who or where this took place, and nobody is going to be held accountable. So it's like a loophole in the system that criminals just kind of get away with, which should be concerning for all of us.
Yes. And you were reimbursed within 2 months, correct?
Yes, within 2 months, I had gotten back the funds.
What did Miss Ruth Howard do to be able to be reimbursed so soon? And I'm saying that because a number of people, even after 3 months, they're left in the cold.
I'll tell you what, persistence is a thing.
All right, tell us about it so others can
Lots
benefit.
of determination. So I'm the kind of person who, when I start what I'll call a complaint with an institution or an organization, I also start a log, a personal log. And I literally follow up. If it gets to the point where I have to on a daily basis, I will call you every single day. And I will tell you every single person I've spoken to. I'll tell you what time I spoke to them, what their name was, and I'll tell you every single email I sent to you and what you told me and when you promised to call me back. When it comes on to things like that, I realize that a lot of people lose because they just can't bother with the bureaucracy. I bother. I call you every day. I check in back because it's my money and I want it back.
And it worked for you.
And it could also be that I just happened to bank with a bank that was willing to be efficient in their dealings. You can't rule that out as well.
More power to you, Miss Howard. Dr. Bourne, well, any other bits of information, findings you'd like to share with us before we...
Another important one is how confident people are that the bank will secure their personal information. And 44% of persons indicated, listen, and they are confident that the bank will secure their personal information. And
what percentage?
44%. No, that is not good at all in terms of the bank. So it means that people fear their personal information getting to hackers. And that is something that the bank needs to look at in terms of what practices and things that they're going to implement to protect people's private information.
Yes. All right. Anything else in terms of your evidence?
There's some first to tell you. There's another one that I heard Ms. Howell actually spoke to this in terms of what people are actually saying. When we ask persons being, are you aware that there are threats to this e-banking system? And 84% of persons say, yes, we're fully aware that there are some threats inside here. And I mean, so what is happening is that people, what is the reality? People are living fully well knowing that there's a likeliness that you're going to blow out freezed. But what else can they do, Ms. Howard?
What percentage you said for the awareness?
84%.
84%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 84. Well, confidence is at 44%. How did the fleecing and your experiences affect your confidence? 86% said they were affected by it.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the threats? 84%. What does all of this say to you as a researcher and also someone who is able to use this information and the stats to formulate suggestions?
It says fundamentally to me that there is a national problem with e-banking in Jamaica. But when we look at internationally, it's no different. I mean, the numbers may not be this high. But it says that there's a national issue, and the system need to actually institute measures and policies that the police now can become a part of this process from day one until the end, because this could erode consumer confidence, which is not what we want, or people to begin to actually start holding their money at their homes, taking it to the bank. When you get paid, take it to the bank and keep it at home. So we do not want to resort to 40 years ago. So what this means that we have to put in place, and when I say we are talking about the banking system, must put in place things to protect the customers from their personal information to their hard-earned resources, particularly cash that they invest in with them.
But there are persons though, Dr. Bourne, who might say, yeah, but the banks would have known about this all these years. This wouldn't be news to many of them because they have the experience every day. Why are we not seeing the changes that need to be made?
Extremely good question, and that sounds like you're a researcher. You need to go in the field and actually ascertain that information because some things are missed in terms of that. Because you're right in terms of saying the bank is fully aware of this. Because when we ask person, I mean, how did you become aware of that? 70% of persons say that their banks have reported the matter to them. So it means that the banks are fully aware that's what is going on. It's just that the solution is not forthcoming.
In bite-sized points, Ms. Howard, what would you say to the listening and viewing public right now, based on your experience and the figures we have been hearing from Dr. Bourne's research?
Well, I think the first thing is people have to be vigilant and do, whatever is within your remit or within your sphere of power or control to do to protect yourself from the e-banking and the fraud. But also, if you find that you can be reimbursed, for example, follow it right up. Take a time, take a steps, make your log, document every engagement with the institution, and then take a time, escalate. The rep's not giving you what you need, get to a manager. The manager not giving you what you need, we need somebody more senior than that. Do not let go. Like one of my biggest things with just Jamaica on a whole, it's not even e-fraud or e-banking, is people just give up because there is so much bureaucracy. Don't give up. It's your money. You want it back. Take the steps. Spend the time. Get it back.
Yeah, and what about the banks, Miss Howard? Any word you have to say to them, the bankers? Any concerns on that part of the spectrum?
Well, we give thanks for the banks who are willing to give the refunds and to do so in a timely manner. For those who don't, we pray we pray grace and that they will, do better, because it is really inconvenient for persons, especially when it's large sums of money. It's really inconvenient for persons to not have access to their funds, to not know when they will have the funds reimbursed. So as much as we can do our best to ensure that we're helping everybody out, because we really do. People are out here doing their best with what they have, and that they would love to be confident that they will be supported by the banks that they've put their trust and their money in.
Yeah. Dr. Bourne, going forward in terms of your research, give us an idea of what we can expect. Should we be expecting you, for example, to come, your researchers to come and to be polling us? What should we expect in that regard?
Absolutely. We're asking persons when we actually forward emails to you and things on WhatsApp to complete the process. We can understand the extent of this issue, because if the matter is this extensive, then we really need to let the banks know that, listen, we are calling that this thing be solved now and not later. Remember, we are saying that 23% of persons have been reimbursed their funds. It means that many persons out there are suffering and hurting, having worked hard to put their funds in the banking system, and that should be addressed.
So even what should we look for in terms of the things that will be emailed to us, so we can identify it as not a fraud?
Extremely good. We're not asking for any resource or anything like that. We're asking you to complete a questionnaire that will be marked banking fraud.
It has banking fraud in it.
Yes, it has banking fraud. So person will be aware we're asking for information. It's a survey that says banking fraud. We're asking persons to complete so we can actually be able to provide institutions and policymakers with information, critical information for them to use to make decisions. Because we're saying Ms. Howard is one of the blessed ones. Yes. But then there are over 70% of individuals who are still hurting.
Okay. All right. Thank you both for joining us. Very interested as we investigated the issues. Have a safe, fraudless day.
Thank you, and likewise.
God bless you. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
The time by Jam Bank is
7:30.
I love doing my own thing, so to have to live by my landlady rules, kind of rough. I can only park near the front gate to the right of the mango tree, but not on the lawn. Well, I fulfill 2 dreams with 1 Jam Bank savings plan. I buy my dream home and I live by my own rules. Stop wishing you could. With your Jam Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jam Bank will help you find a way.
Think ahead, make a plan. We got the freedom of choice.
Lark, long-acting reversible contraceptives. I made my choice 6 years ago. I have an IUCD, also called copper T, and it will go and protect me from pregnancy for another 4 years at least. My choice was an implant. It lasts for 5 years. When I'm ready for a baby, I just make doctor take it out. Contact the National Family Planning Board at 9681632 to find out more about the Lark.
Think ahead, make a plan. We got the freedom of choice.
You are a dedicated small business owner, dreaming big of growing your business and reaching new heights. With Access Financial Services, you can grow from where you are to where you want to be. Grow from a corner shop to your very own store, from truck driver to trucking fleet, from hairdresser to your own salon. Secure your small business loan of up to $20 million and watch as your business grows from planning to possibilities. Grow your business today with Access Financial Services. Conditions apply.
JPS. Keep it cool, keep it cool. Summertime hot, but we got the doors. Keep it cool, keep it cool. No place to see it, you don't have a chance. Out of the fridge, just use a big blue. Then what you kiss go and stand it. You find AC, come out there. But AC, if you have it, then up and after that. Keep it cool, keep it cool. This summer JPS, shut all the doors. Keep it cool with JPS. Download the JPS app today.
Seniors, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security is advising that the March 2024 payment under the Social Pension Program is now ready for collection. Check your text messages to confirm your payment arrangements. For further information, call 876-922-8007 or check the Ministry's website, www.nlss.gov.jm. The Social Pension Program, caring for our elderly, a message from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Poetry, sweet, fresh, beat, it's a cake, fluff, nice, the best combo, every bite I have in. Yo, had the nicest coconut, and patty on my head. Make taste buds are melt, taste homemade every day. I forget some juicy, fresh, beat, it's a cake, fluff, nice, the best combo, every bite I have in. Get the best patty and cocoa bread and juicy today.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, executions worldwide jumped last year to the highest number since 2015, says Amnesty report. Also in the Gleaner, Transitional Council in Haiti selects new prime minister for a country under siege by gangs. In the Observer, records management system coming for Jamaica Fire Brigade, says Mackenzie. And also in the Gleaner, patient probe. MAJ urges authorities to swiftly get justice in journalists' killings. Those are some of the major stories, headlines in our newspaper. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What's your personal e-banking fraud story in a nutshell? What's your personal e-banking fraud story in a nutshell? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3120. 25. Soon come back.
Is your money idling when it could be thriving? With CIBC Caribbean's fixed deposit offering, you can take charge of your cash. With 50,000 Jamaican to start, choose terms from 30 days to 2 years. Lock in your funds and enjoy premium rates guaranteed to grow your wealth. Whether you're eyeing short or long-term gains, our fixed deposit account puts you firmly in control of your money. Now is the time to open a CIBC fixed deposit account and start earning more today. CIBC, ambitions made real.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Get a Samsung A05 from Flow for $8,125 or Samsung A05s for only $9,000. Both come with a free 28-day unlimited social talk and text plan. Now that's great news. This is a Flow store today, available while stocks last. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And now as we go into the second watch, it was regarded as making legal history. We're talking about a law which involved revolutionary changes that have allegedly been reaping huge rewards and benefits for individuals and the country at large. Which law is this? And how is this, you may ask? Well, to answer these and other related questions, we have online Ms. Carleen Salmon, attorney at law, and Mrs. Gabrielle Gilpin Hudson, first vice president of the Realtors Association, and she's also a real estate broker. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. Good to have you both with us. Let me begin with you, Ms. Salmon. Of course, we're referring to the Administrator General's Amendment Act. What is it really, and when and why was it instituted?
Well, okay, so I will only attempt to get into the mind of the legislators. So the Administrator General's Act, as you know, empowers the Administrator General to act in estates where there is no, the person has died without leaving a will. And particularly in instances where, for example, there are persons who would be potential beneficiaries who would need their interests protected. So you're talking about minors, you're talking about persons who are under, particular disabilities, who perhaps were the responsibility of the deceased person before they died, and their interests would need to be safeguarded, Yes. So the Administrator General's Act empowers the Administrator General to act in those instances. The amendments, however, in 2015 were particularly useful because over time there has been a backlog of cases, matters, estates being handled by the Administrator General. And part of the backlog is that the Administrator General, before the amendment, was required, like everybody else, to make an application to the Supreme Court for a grant of letters of administration in the estate of the deceased. And of course, the court is handling thousands of applications each year. Right? Apart from these coming from the Administrator General, you have applications for grants of probate, you have applications for regular applications for grants of letters of administration, you have grants that were made in overseas jurisdictions that need to be resealed in Jamaica because they're assets in Jamaica. So you're talking about maybe hundreds of thousands of applications before the Supreme Court. So the Administrator General would be in that line, clogging up the system. So the amendments allow the Administrator General to not have to apply to the Supreme Court for a grant in those estates in which she has an interest, and allows her to issue her own certificate. She would examine the facts, determine that yes, she has standing in the matter, and she can issue her own certificate, and that allows her then to go ahead and to do the administration, which means taking custody of things like bank accounts, taking custody of properties, and holding those until the person under the beneficiary under the age of 18 becomes an adult, turns 18, and then they can be vested with the property outright, or the property can be sold and the funds held on trust for them. So it helps both sides. It helps the Administrator General to get her process going, or to keep her process flowing smoothly, and it also helps us on the other side who still have to make applications to the Supreme Court. It means that there are a lot less matters in the queue.
Okay. Mrs. Gilpin Hudson, from the perspective and standpoint of the Realtors Association, is this a win-win?
So I think that it is a step in the right direction. Certainly as real estate professionals, before we're able to assist anybody with selling property, we have to make sure that they have the legal standing to do so. And so we have a lot of potential clients coming to us looking to deal with these estate properties that have not yet secured the adequate grants of representation, and they cannot move forward. We have to turn them away, because until you have that grant or the instrument under the new under the amendments, we are not able to treat with you as the legal representative for the estate. You don't have the legal standing to put that property up for sale with us. So I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction to empower more persons to be able to get access to deal with these properties, particularly in the instance of intergenerational estates, because what has happened is a lot of persons come to deal with property that would have belonged to their grandparents or their great-grandparents, and so the situation can get very messy where you have multiple generations of grants of representation missing. And so to unwind all of that, the amendment is very helpful. I think what I'd also say is, I think more education is needed to the general public about these things that need to be done when your loved ones pass away, because part of the reason we see ourselves in this problem is because persons may not have been aware of the steps they need to take in the past to be able to deal with the properties moving forward.
Yes. And based on what you just said, you mentioned about the intergenerational estates. Already, are you seeing improvement in that regard, in handling those matters?
I think it's trickling down. I don't think that I see a flood of these properties coming to market, particularly because getting these grants are just one step in the process. But also, once you are able to secure, the grant to allow you to deal with the estate, you now have to look at settling things like death duties and other fees that are payable. And until you do those things, you can't actually deal with the property. And sometimes the only thing in these estates are the property. So it's a chicken and egg situation where you can't sell the property to get the money to pay the fees. So the beneficiaries who are looking to inherit the property have to come up with the cash to clear these expenses before being able to access the benefits of the property.
I say it's trickling. I know, it's, anecdotally, what's the situation in terms of that process now with this new act? Well, 2015 act.
I still think that even though the amendments exist, there's an education issue, meaning that we still have to turn away a lot of people who have not yet done what they need to do to be able to deal with the estates. That being said, I think that a lot of persons have done what they need to do and are becoming more aware of it. But I don't think that I'm seeing an overwhelming flood of persons who are now aware of this amendment, even though it's not that recent.
Okay.
Benefiting from it. So I definitely think,
Yes, sorry, Mrs. Gilpin Hudson. We're up on a break. Hold that thought. Be right back.
Time on Love 101 is now 7:45 a.m.
When tape diapers are difficult to change, it's time for Pampers Easy Ups with 360 stretchy waistband. They're easy to put on and take off, keeping their skin dry and protected.
If you're a farmer or a fisher folk, this one's for you. Sagicor AgriCare Plan. With AgriCare Plan, you can get affordable insurance coverage for you and your family. Life insurance, health insurance, and the critical illness coverage for as little as $675 every 3 months. Visit your nearest RADA or fisheries office or call 876-936-7785 to apply. Farmers and fisher folks, get the insurance coverage your family deserves today with Sagicor AgriCare Plan. Conditions apply.
Joan is living with HIV and she has the full support of her community.
Oh, Joan, one of my favorite passengers them. Nah, left her road. Me, I love Joan. She sell the best box food on the block. You know what I say, Joan are the first year me ever do. I'm not the first. Anything she wants, I'm there for her. Just like you.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and in this, the second watch, we are looking at estate law changes. And we're asking, is it really a win-win for all? In so doing, we have online Ms. Carleen Salmon, attorney at law, and Mrs. Gabrielle Gilpin Hudson, first VP of the Realtors Association, and she's a real estate broker. Mrs. Gilpin, before the break, I think you were telling us, is it really a win-win, and your experience coming from your perspective?
I think it is a win-win, but I think it could be utilized a lot more if we educate persons about the steps that they need to take after their loved ones pass away. Because as I said, as real estate professionals, a lot of the time we need to point someone in the right direction and say, well, you need to speak with an attorney to help you to get the requisite grants to empower you to be able to deal with the property. And then before the break, I would have also mentioned the issues of persons not necessarily having the funds on hand to deal with some of the costs associated with clearing the fees for the grant and then be able to deal with the property.
Yeah. Ms. Salmon, attorney at law, why is it a win-win from your perspective?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think, as I stated earlier, it just means that the process can move a little faster, because one of the challenges with the having the administrator general involved in an estate, and I mean, as an attorney at the private bar, one of the concerns clients have is the time it takes, and the time it takes is as a result of the time for the administrator general to administer an estate. A lot of the time is taken up waiting for the grant from the Supreme Court. So now that that element has been cut out, it means that the processing or the administering of estate should go a lot faster. But I just wanted to make a comment on something that that Gabrielle mentioned a while ago. It is true that another factor, apart from the time that has hindered the completion of these estates and people's ability to sell properties, is the cost of getting the grant. However, the National Land Agency, there is an act called the Special Provisions Act, that's a short name for it, that allows for applications be made to the National Land Agency. It's the Land Administration and Management Division of the National Land Agency, for waivers of transfer tax on death, because that is the most significant cost. You're talking about 2% of the value of the property as of the date of the death. Sorry, 1.5% of the value of the property as of the date of the death of the deceased. And sometimes these properties are worth a lot. So fine, you get the grant, but then when you are going to be transferring the property into the name of the beneficiary, you have to contend with the transfer tax on death at 1.5%. However, there are facilities under the law. The Special Provisions Act allows you to make an application to the National Land Agency for that transfer tax on death to be waived. So that is another avenue for people to save, on costs. And all of those, the amendment to the Administrator General's Act, the Special Provisions Act, are designed to encourage people to move properties out of the names of their deceased loved ones, because that's a problem in Jamaica. You have a lot of properties tied up for generations in the name of somebody who died many years ago, simply because the family cannot afford to do the necessary administration of the deceased estate.
Yeah. Mrs. Gilpin Hudson, and I'll throw the question after to Miss Salmon. So far, you ladies seem upbeat about this. Are there any drawbacks, though, to this act? Beginning with you, of course, Mrs. Gilpin Hudson. What's the downside to it?
I wouldn't say that there's any particular downside. I think anything that can make some of our bureaucratic processes faster, particularly with the backlog in the court, benefits everybody. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a lot of downside. I suppose, depending on the process, some estates are contentious. So, you might have instances where there are persons contesting who is entitled to benefit in an estate. You might have to look at proving relation to the deceased and things like that. So, the amendment kind of doesn't treat with a lot of other situations that also need attention. So maybe that could be a downside. But at this point, I agree with Carleen that, even in my capacity as an attorney as well, anything that we can see being done to decrease the time that it takes to process these estates is greatly appreciated, because it is a problem and it is a pain point, whether your clients are local or from the diaspora, because a lot of persons just cannot wrap their head around why it is that it takes so long to deal with dead left assets.
Mm-hmm. And before I throw to Miss Salmon, you mentioned about other situations that need attention as a possible downside. Say more on that, please.
So, for example, Administrator General would come in situations where there is no will under the laws of intestacy, where you have situations where there is a will or there are not vulnerable persons who the Administrator General protects, like children. Then, you're not necessarily able to seek the benefits of the amendment depending on the situation. So there's still a whole lot of other permutations of situations that can arise that this amendment is not helping.
Okay. And Ms. Salmon, from your perspective, any drawbacks to this amendment?
Don't see, I'm with Gabby on this. I don't see any particular drawbacks to the specific amendments, but I would agree with Gabby that there needs to be a lot more done in terms of making the process easier for administration, not only of estates where there is no will, but also even in terms of the grant of probate. We've seen the process move a little bit faster in the Supreme Court because some of the backlog has been cleared. But I think we can get to the point where, like in the UK, you make an application and within, if it's not a few days, within a week or 2 weeks, a month, the grant is issued. Here we're looking at 6 months to a year sometimes. The other pain point for me is the category of persons who can apply for a grant of letters of administration, because the law provides outside of the Administrator General, because the Administrator General, as we said, comes in specific instances, when there are persons to be protected, minors in particular. But the legislation that governs administration, both the civil procedure rules and the I'm not remembering the other, Intestates Act, right? Intestate and Charges Act. Limits the persons who can apply for a grant of letters of administration. So, for example, you have a situation where a person has died. This person never married, never had children. Their parents are dead. There are the only living relative for that person is a niece or a nephew, and the intestacy rules do not allow nieces or nephews to apply for a grant of letters of administration. Or you may have, Gavin, maybe you can help me out. I can't remember if grandchildren, I think grandchildren can apply, but I think the category of persons needs to be widened, because that's another factor too. I've had people come to me and say, well, I had this aunt die. She left this property that really was, it was really the family home. And she was the last person living in it. And I am the only living relative for this person. How do I get this property? And she didn't leave a will. Well, technically, you can't apply for a grant of administration. But funnily enough, if your aunt died owing somebody like a bank or somebody else who owed money, that person can apply for a grant of administration. So I think the categories need to be widened.
Interesting stuff there. I was wondering why the nieces and the nephews were excluded.
I don't know. I really don't know, because in other jurisdictions, I know, for example, in Canada, nieces and nephews can apply.
And what about the region, or Caribbean region? I mean, is it only Jamaica?
Well, I can't. I would imagine if the same situation is repeated across or reflected across the Caribbean, because remember, we get our legislation in the English-speaking Caribbean from we inherited a lot of our laws from the United Kingdom when we were colonies. So yes, we've made amendments over the years, but basically it's pretty much the same template across the region. So I can't speak specifically to say, well, it's the same in Trinidad or Barbados, because I'm not familiar with their legislation, but it could very well be the case, because we all, have a common history in terms of our legislation.
Understood. Ladies, as we seek to wrap our discussion, based on all that has been said and this Administrator General's Amendment Act, what are your suggestions or recommendations for those involved or getting involved in estate-related matters? Beginning with you, Mrs. Gilpin Hudson.
Boy, my number one recommendation is to get the right professional advice, and that applies whether you're in Jamaica or overseas trying to deal with the assets in Jamaica, because that can make or break the situation so much. Not every lawyer, not every realtor is au fait with dealing with situations like this, so you really want to speak to somebody that's experienced in the area. So you want to get a good attorney as soon as you have gone through your grieving process and are ready to get down to business, get an attorney, and then you can look to getting a real estate agent involved to look at how you can go about disposing of the assets.
Okay, get an attorney. All right. And Mrs. Salmon.
I say ditto. Get the right professional, because I think a lot of what happens is people try to do it themselves because they think, lawyers are too expensive or lawyers are dishonest. But the fact is, a good lawyer who is familiar with the legislation, who is familiar with the procedures, can save you a lot of time and a lot of money, because when you go in blindly, inexperienced, you make a lot of blunders, and that can just extend the time and make the process even more expensive.
Suppose you can't afford a lawyer at all. Would the legal aid council deal with such matters?
Well, no, the legal aid is there. You can get assistance from the legal aid clinic. That's fine. Yes, that exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then also to add to that, I would say that a lot of attorneys are used to cash not being in the estate upfront in these matters. And so you might find that they will maybe take a smaller retainer upfront and look to recover fees when the property is eventually sold. So there are people that will work with you.
Thank you. Well, ladies, our time is up. We want to thank you both for joining us and for enlightening us on this estate law matter. Have a safe and productive day.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, and you back to Love in the Morning with Jukal Dyer.